Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, well, we've got a stack of sources putting us right in the middle of a potential political and financial whirlwind. Our topic. It's where high-stakes U.S. politics meets Binance, the huge crypto empire.
That's right. We're digging into this pretty serious scenario that's doing the rounds. It's still hypothetical, mind you, but it's the idea that Donald Trump, maybe using presidential pardon powers, could potentially forgive Changpeng Zhao, CZ, Binance's founder.
And not just forgive him.
No, exactly. And then maybe bring him into a top-level advisory role focused specifically on shaping how the U.S. handles crypto policy going forward.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit, because this scenario, it pits judicial consequences right against executive power. This isn't just some D.C. gossip, right? If you really analyze this hypothetical, it forces you to look at everything. Global financial rules, how institutions might adopt crypto, even the basic geopolitics of who's going to lead digital innovation next.
Yeah, and to really get the weight of this speculation, you first need the context on CZ himself. I mean, he's undoubtedly one of the most influential people in crypto history.
Wow.
He built Binance into the world's biggest exchange by trading volume anyway. But his legal situation in the U.S. was, well, it was just as massive.
And it's really important to get the specifics there. It wasn't about him, personally committing fraud, was it? It was more systemic.
Precisely. His conviction stemmed from a huge systemic breakdown in implementing controls, specifically things like anti-money laundering, AML, and know your customer KYC rules. They just weren't properly in place.
Okay.
The Department of Justice argued this failure was so widespread, it basically let illicit money flow through Binance for years, the settlement, one of the largest corporate penalties in U.S. history.
Wow.
And his conviction really kicked off this massive global discussion, where's the line, between letting blockchain innovation flourish and maintaining the strict financial safeguards you need for global finance.
And what's so fascinating here is how this legal drama bumps up against Donald Trump's own kind of public shift on crypto. Because initially, he was really critical, wasn't he? Bitcoin, other cryptos. He often talked about instability, them not being real money.
Oh, yeah. That view has shifted dramatically. Over the past year or so, we've seen him take a much more, moderate stance, maybe even promotional towards crypto. His recent comments suggest he sees crypto-friendly policies as pretty crucial for future U.S. economic competitiveness, and maybe a way to attract younger, politically active voters, too.
So the argument you see in the sources of the critique really is that this shift isn't just about philosophy changing. It's seen as strategic. Critics are saying it's a clear play to pull in investment money and votes from those tech and finance groups who feel, regulators like the SEC have been holding things back too much.
And if you tie that back to the idea of a potential second Trump administration, well, the thought of setting up a dedicated crypto team with advisors, maybe even including someone like CZ, it fits, doesn't it? It signals, hey, we're willing to shake things up, challenge the status quo, and really go after those tech-savvy investors.
Okay, so that sets the scene. Now let's get into the what-ifs, the implications. If we actually imagine this pardon happening, this is where the speculation really gets complicated. The sources point to 4 immediate, huge effects. First off, political legitimacy.
Right. Giving a pardon to someone as high profile as CZ, that's a statement. An unambiguous one. It basically broadcasts that this administration values innovation, global competitiveness, maybe more than the traditional, often slow regulatory ways of doing things. It would send a jolt through the financial world, signaling the U.S. is wide open for crypto business, perhaps no matter the earlier issues.
And that political signal directly feeds the second effect, a major regulatory shakeup. We're not talking small changes here. Pardoning CZ could pave the way for some really aggressive reforms across the whole U.S. crypto landscape, potentially dismantling or seriously softening rules currently enforced by the SEC, the CFTC.
And we should probably clarify what kinds of reforms we might see. It's likely about getting clear rules for things like DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, how they should be treated legally, or maybe a big shift in how U.S. enforcement works globally, pushing back on the idea that U.S. rules apply everywhere just because dollars might be involved somewhere. It's about building crypto-native rules, not just forcing crypto into old banking laws.
Okay. Then the third effect is straight up economic, and likely very fast. Just the perception of a suddenly much friendlier regulatory climate in the U.S. That's like ringing a dinner bell for capital. You probably see immediate, huge investment flows heading straight for U.S.-based blockchain tech, all driven by the idea of lower regulatory hurdles.
But you can't really talk about that potential upside without hitting the fourth point, the unavoidable one, the reputational risks.
Yeah, this is the core tension, isn't it? While the crypto world might erupt in cheers, an action like this would draw instant, fierce backlash from traditional finance, probably from Democrats in Congress, international allies. They'd slam the administration for appearing soft on alleged financial crimes, for overlooking past regulatory failures, essentially asking, does political expediency trump the rule of law?
And that really is the crux of this whole speculative scenario. How could one single high-level political move completely reshape how the world sees crypto assets? Does the U.S. lift them into the mainstream by embracing their most successful and, yeah, controversial figures? Or does it just end up proving the critics right that crypto operates kind of outside the normal ethical boundaries of finance?
Okay, so if we move beyond the pardon itself, the sheer drama of it, and think about the policy side, CZ actually, as an advisor, the ripples get even wider.
Right.
Bringing someone with his specific background into the tent isn't just for show. It creates a really strong, direct link between deep operational business know-how, I mean, from running the world's biggest exchange, and the actual political decision-making.
Yeah, his value would likely be seen as twofold. First, he'd offer unmatched insight into where current regulations create real bottlenecks for businesses. He's lived it. And second, he represents a kind of political capital with a massive global crypto community. But yeah, that immediately raises potential conflict of interest questions right at the heart of policymaking, doesn't it?
Which means we can start to guess at the kinds of policies a partnership like that might push for. And it seems very focused on making the U.S. the destination for crypto.
Absolutely. The policy roadmap would probably focus on three main areas. First, what everyone says is desperately needed, a single, unified legal framework, specifically for exchanges, digital assets, stablecoins. Right now, exchanges are stuck navigating between multiple regulators, SEC, CFTC, FinCEN, often with conflicting signals. A unified framework could slash that legal uncertainty.
Makes sense.
And Second, this team would likely drive really aggressive strategies designed explicitly to make the United States the undeniable global hut for crypto innovation. We're not just talking about playing catch-up. We're talking about actively pulling talent and capital away from places like Singapore, Dubai, and specifically competing with the EU's big regulatory package, MiCA, that's rolling out now.
Okay, and the third pillar.
And third, it's likely the administration would push ahead on developing government-backed digital currencies, a CBDC, a central bank digital currency. But, and this is key, probably designed with heavy private sector involvement, trying to avoid those purely state-run models you see elsewhere by leveraging expertise from people actually in the decentralized tech world, like potentially CZ.
Okay, so the big picture. What does this all mean for the future of finance? And what are the big risks here? Let's shift to those high-level challenges, because it's one thing to issue a pardon or float an idea. It's totally different to actually govern a whole new, complex financial system successfully.
Indeed. The sources highlight four really critical hurdles. If these aren't managed, the whole strategy could backfire spectacularly. First, that regulatory balance. Any pro-crypto shift has to avoid looking like a weakening of fundamental financial standards, especially in the eyes of global financial bodies or other major countries. If international trust in the U.S. financial system starts to wobble because it looks too permissive, the economic fallout could be huge.
Then the second hurdle, very political this one, is credibility. The administration would face instant, non-stop criticism that pardoning CZ was just a direct handout to powerful private interests, that risks eroding public trust in the idea that laws apply equally to everyone. How do you govern effectively when a key advisor was just pardoned for the very kinds of issues you're now trying to regulate?
And that ties straight into the third challenge, keeping the ecosystem sustainable. The government would need rock-solid assurances that letting crypto expand rapidly under friendlier rules doesn't just open the door wider to crazy speculation, fraud, or money laundering. Innovation can't be an excuse to repeat the chaotic boom and bust cycles we've seen before.
Right. And finally, number 4, technological geopolitics. It boils down to staying competitive globally. You have to look at what other big players are doing. When we talk about global leadership in crypto, the U.S. is really competing against two main models, aren't they?
Exactly. On one side, you've got the European Union trying to build the first truly comprehensive, centralized rulebook for crypto with MiCA. It's all about structure and control. On the other side, there's China, which has gone for a very centralized, state-controlled approach with its digital yuan, very closed system. The potential U.S. strategy, especially if it's heavily influenced by private sector figures like CZ, seems to lean more towards innovation, maybe more decentralization. The challenge is making sure that private sector-led model doesn't get outpaced or undermined by the more state-directed, potentially faster-moving strategies of its global rivals.
So this whole hypothetical CZ, potentially going from facing judicial penalties to advising on U.S. policy, it really captures this unique, often messy intersection where digital governance, global economics, and raw American political power all collide.
Yeah, and the final takeaway from the sources is pretty crucial, I think. This potential pardon shouldn't just be seen as a political game, purely about votes or campaign funds. You could view it as a really high-stakes gamble, a strategy that could massively speed up crypto becoming institutionalized worldwide, basically declaring that the world's most successful, if sometimes controversial, decentralized finance players are now vital to America's economic future.
Which leaves you, our listener, with this final thought to chew on. If this kind of scenario did play out, if someone previously sanctioned by the U.S. government actually becomes an official policy advisor, how might our collective understanding legally and publicly of what counts as financial crime versus what's just regulatory innovation, how might that line fundamentally shift in the years ahead? Something to think about as the political and financial landscapes keep evolving. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.